Good morning, everybody. I am so sorry. I am back. I am back. I had a few technical glitches, but hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. My name's Claudia Lefebvre, and I am a nutritional therapist. And just one moment while I sort this out. Um, um, so, welcome, welcome. Here we are. I'm Claudia Lefebvre, nutritional therapist and eating psychology coach with 19 years clinical experience. I lecture at various British nutritional colleges, and I'm here on YouTube every Friday at 11 a.m., all being well. I'm so sorry I had some technical issues this morning. But in honor of International Women's Day, I think it's tomorrow, I wanted to talk about female nutrition and women's nutrition. And there's a lot to be said, can I just say? Women in general tend to live longer, but suffer more. Why do women suffer more with chronic diseases? Why are women more prone to autoimmune disease? I think it's only type 1 diabetes that has a male bias. Every single other autoimmune disease has a strong female bias. Osteoporosis, dementia, and Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease. There are many, many conditions that women seem to struggle more with. Why is that? Well, there's one word. I'm sure you can probably guess what that word is: hormones. Women, we are complex creatures. Our hormone cycles tend to be on a monthly basis of moving around. Men, their testosterone is on a 24-hour cycle. So we have a lot going on. And our hormones, they don't just work independently of everything else going in the body. So sometimes when we think, oh, I've got to balance my hormones, and we want to dive straight into looking at what's my estrogen level, what's my progesterone level. Well, the truth is that it's an entire symphony, an orchestra working together. And actually, our estrogen interacts with our cortisol, and I'm going to explain a little bit more. But actually, we know that our female sex hormones interact with our immune system, and that is why women are more prone to autoimmune conditions. We also know that when women reach menopause and their estrogen levels literally fall off that cliff, that reduction in estrogen triggers something called osteoclasts. So in our bones, we have two types of cells. We've got osteoblasts that build bone cells, because the bones are a very active organ, constantly remodeling. So we've got osteoblasts building the bones up, and we've got osteoclasts breaking the bones down. So one of the ways I remember this, I think B for building, C for catastrophe. So when we know that when the estrogen levels drop, that has a real impact and increases osteoclast activity. So it increases the breakdown of the bones. Cognition and dementia. We know again that estrogen can have a very neuroprotective effect on the brain. Cardiovascular disease. Estrogen really makes a big difference to lipid profiles, to our fat profiles, which is why often during menopause, perimenopause, our cholesterol readings can change. So there's lots so many interactions in the body. I want you to see it as like an orchestra coming together. And the sex hormones also interact with other hormones. Hormones communicate with other hormones. So particularly estrogen and progesterone around the leptin and ghrelin, which are the hunger hormone and the satiety hormone. Thyroid hormones interact a lot. Insulin, cortisol. So cortisol and estrogen, they create fireworks together. And this is why there can be huge swings in our hormone levels when we're stressed. I mean, especially as we get older, as we go into peri and menopause, being stressed can cause huge swings and fluctuations in our hormone levels, way more than when we were in our younger years. Now, you might be thinking, oh, I'm past all that now. I'm past, I'm through the menopause. So I don't need to be worrying about hormones. Or you certainly shouldn't be worrying about them, but we should still be considering them, because conditions like, for example, estrogen dominance, they can contribute to conditions like breast cancer, and on all sorts of symptoms that we will delve into probably next week around that. But to have estrogen dominance, it's not that you have to have a lot of estrogen. You don't need to have necessarily excess estrogen. It's all about the ratio in balance to the progesterone. So all will be revealed. I hope that makes sense. So when we're looking at hormone health and hormone balance, so we want to be thinking about the overall picture. Like I said, it's a big orchestra, and you've got the cymbals clashing, and you've got the wood wind over there, and you've got, I don't know, all the different sections of the orchestra, and the big conductor. So, and the conductor is trying to keep homeostasis, trying to keep everything balanced. So what can we do to try and keep ourselves a little bit more in balance? Well, number one, I know I talked about this last week, we need to think about our blood sugar levels and our blood sugar balance, because when our blood sugar levels are in balance, we are on a more even keel, we've got more energy, we're more stable. When we've got big fluctuations and we're on a little bit of a roller coaster and we're producing excessive insulin, for example, because we're eating a very high sugar diet, which is creating a lot of sugar in the bloodstream. This is an emergency situation for the body. So what happens is the pancreas produces insulin, takes the sugar out of the bloodstream, because this is the priority. But that insulin is pro-inflammatory. That insulin interacts with cortisol, our major stress hormone. So insulin, cortisol, these are stressors to the body that can impact on our hormones. So we need to make sure that we're balancing our blood sugar levels, that we're having really good levels of fiber, that we're having some protein every meal, that we're not having too much sugar in our diets, all of this. So balancing blood sugar, a golden rule, wherever you're at in your hormone cycle. And just because we're in, you might be in menopause or perimenopause, you still have hormone cycling. They just might not be at the quantities. Obviously, it's not enough to stimulate ovulation, but you will still have hormone cycling. And that's why for some women, and I know this must feel quite unfortunate, but for some women well into their menopause years, they still feel like they're getting their PMS, like this phantom PMS, premenstrual symptom, but it's because the hormones are still cycling, just not in the quantities. Okay, so that was number one, balance the blood sugar. Number two is support the liver. Now, the health of our liver is really, really important for detoxifying hormones. And something that I know you've heard me say this before, but something that I love about the liver is its amazing powers for regeneration. So the liver is a very, very forgiving organ, and there's always so much that we can do to support our liver function. And we're going to go a little bit more into the hormones now and how the liver detoxifies and why the liver function is so important. So when you have an active estrogen molecule, it has a short life, and then it needs to be detoxified by the body and removed. And the way that happens, I always think of detoxification as what's phase one and phase two. And I think of it as the washing machine and the tumble dryer. So first you've got to wash your clothes, and then you've got to put them into the tumble dryer. And the whole point of this is you've got to make all the toxins and all the hormones and everything the body is trying to remove, you've got to make it water soluble. So it can go out through the urine, it can go out through the feces. That's the process. Washing machine, tumble dryer. Now, the way active estrogens work is they can get converted. They're actually four different pathways for them to get converted. It's known as 2-OH estradiol or 2-OH estrone, 16-OH, and 4-OH. So they're four different numbers. And bear with me, caller. I'm going to explain why I'm bothering to tell you about this. Some of these forms have cancer risk associated with them, and some of these forms are incredibly protective and nurturing for the body, and, for example, essential for bone health. So we do need our estrogens, but we want to make sure we're converting it into the right form. Now, it's the first one, the 2-OH estradiol, is the really nurturing, supportive form of estrogen. The 16-OH is the kind of more dangerous one, if you like. And what's so important, rather than total output and total numbers, we really want to know what's the ratio. What's the ratio of our 2-estradiol to our 16-OH? Okay, that's important. And especially if you've got a family history of breast cancer, it is something you might want to test. And it's a very easy test. You can do it as a urine test. It's called Essential Estrogens is one of the tests, and that's by Genova Diagnostics. You can always send me a DM and I will put you in touch with them. Or it's generally known as an estrogen metabolism assessment. Now, what's the point in knowing? Well, a big point in knowing, because we can actually influence the pathways. So this is all this is all kind of phase one, the washing machine, if you like, of the estrogen breaking down of the estrogen, and we can influence which pathways the estrogen is going, that active estrogen is going to be broken down into. And the biggest thing we can do to influence this into the number two is to increase our cruciferous vegetables. Now, cruciferous vegetables contain something called cruciferous indoles. Now, these indoles, the most famous one is known as DIM, D-I-M. Now, some people take DIM as a supplement. You could do if you did the test and you found out that you were converting into the 16 pathway and not into the 2. But really, you can just do it yourself without any supplements, without testing. You can just try to eat 2 cups of cruciferous vegetables every day. So cruciferous, I mean cauliflower, broccoli, spinach, pak choi, cabbage, kale is another good one. So try and have your dark green leafy veg, and it really, really can impact on your metabolism, your estrogen metabolism and breakdown. So I've worked with clients in the past with history of breast cancer, for example. We've measured, found out their ratio was not ideal, got them on the DIM, got them eating cruciferous vegetables, retest, and it really does change the pathway. So that is the washing machine. Moving on to the tumble dryer. So this is where phase 2, this is where the conjugation happens, where the molecules need to be linked together. So we've got this free estrogen. It needs to be connected to something else so that it can be exported out of the body, because we don't want all these hormones recycling. And in estrogen pairs up with something called glucuronic acid. Now, the idea is you have enough glucuronic acid in your body, and it goes through the body and then out into the urine and the feces. Now, sadly, there's something called beta-glucuronidase, which is an enzyme in the body, and it's like a pair of scissors, and it goes around finding these happily conjugated estrogen and glucuronic acid molecules, and it goes around, breaks them up, and creates the free estrogen molecule again. So how can we make sure we don't have too much beta-glucuronidase? Well, beta-glucuronidase is actually something quite easy to measure in a stool analysis. So we can test our beta-glucuronidase levels, but we know that this is where the gut comes into it now, that a low fiber, high fat, high meat diet is going to increase the beta-glucuronidase. And a high fiber diet, fermented foods with the good bacteria, absolutely reduce the beta-glucuronidase levels. Again, it's something we can test for. And if someone comes up with a high reading of beta-glucuronidase, what I do in my clinical practice is I give them something called calcium D-glucarate, a supplement, which is in the form of, it's calcium in the form of D-glucarate, which helps the body with the glucuronic acid. So it will correct it, but I would never give that supplement without having tested first. You need to know for sure that there's elevated beta-glucuronidase levels before doing that. The best insurance policy you can have is to increase your fiber and and reduce, make sure you're having healthy fats, but not lots of saturated fats, and not relying too much on animal protein as well. So I know I've thrown a lot of information at you, but are you beginning to get the picture here? It's not just about estrogen and progesterone. We've got to make sure that the whole body is set up, this whole interconnectedness, so it becomes a very, very virtuous circle. This is the plan. Right. So health of the liver. So we've done blood sugar, we've done health of the liver, but actually gut health is really important too, as we've discovered with beta-glucuronidase. Also, in terms of gut health, let's not be constipated. let's have a healthy bowel movement. Ideally, once or twice a day is optimal, or even for some people 3 times, as long as it's not loose. And so we want to have healthy bowel movements, because if you think of the colon as this tube, in fact, it's going from your right to your left. And it's this tube, and it's never really the smooth tube that it looks like in the textbooks, biology textbooks, if you cast your mind back to your O-levels or GCSEs. And what happens is that obviously the faster the stool travels through the colon, the looser the feces, the looser the stool is. And if it travels very slowly, the more dry and difficult to pass it can become. And that's because the colon is surrounded by hundreds of blood vessels. And these blood vessels absorb water back into the bloodstream. And they absorb cholesterol back into the bloodstream. And guess what? They can absorb hormones back into the bloodstream if our stools are lingering in our colons. So we want to be having healthy bowels as well. And then lastly, so we've blood sugar, liver, gut, and lastly is we want to look at our essential fatty acid profile. So our good fats, make sure we're having the good fats, our olive oils, our oily fish, our nuts and seeds, getting all those omega oils in, because our hormones, again, hugely influence our lipid profile. So our good fats, our LDL versus our HDL. Now, ironically, LDL is not the enemy here, because we actually need specifically LDL to manufacture all our sex hormones. So here we are, we're going to be talking this week and next week. Here we are talking about the need for sex hormones, how to keep them in balance, how to keep everything on an even keel. And there we go. For we actually need LDL cholesterol in order to manufacture our sex hormones. So we don't want to be going too low, but obviously we want to be in reference range. A lot of women, they find as they go into menopause, their whole entire lipid profile changes. Now that could also be, just bear in mind, that could be thyroid hormone issues. So if someone develops hypothyroidism, so a sluggishness, a fatigue, a lower activity in the thyroid gland, that can absolutely increase cholesterol levels as well. But remember, sex hormones interact with the thyroid gland too. So it's one enormous orchestra. So that's really what I wanted to talk to you about today. I wanted to set the scene for optimal hormone health. And then next week, what we're going to do is we're going to look at estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, and we're going to look at what are the symptoms associated with excess estrogen or low estrogen, low progesterone, low testosterone. We're going to look into all of those, and we're going to take a deep dive into, for example, the impact of plastics, all these xenoestrogens, non-estrogens that mimic estrogen in the body. So that's the plan next week. So we'll take a deeper dive into the sex hormones themselves. But today I just wanted to explain the orchestra and how we need to get everything in concert working together. So I'm just going to have a look at your comments here. Yes, so thank you. I'm so sorry for the technical issues earlier. It's difficult to include fiber with a gluten-free diet. That's an excellent point. Well, have you thought about beans and lentils and chickpeas? All the legumes are a fantastic source of fiber. And the edamame beans are the beans with the highest fiber of all. So, and of course, all our fruit and veg contain plenty of fiber as well. And those fiber strands of fiber, those are fuel for all the good bacteria in our bodies. And the reason that the beta glucuronidase enzyme can creep up with the low fiber is because you're not feeding enough fiber for the good bacteria to necessarily keep the bad bacteria in check. And some of the bad bacteria have been directly associated with elevated beta glucuronidase levels. So I know we've gone a little bit technical today, but thank you so much for finding me. It's I know it was a bit of a mission today, and also if you have any requests, but what we're going to be doing next week, like I said, more on the hormones, and then we can look at hormone specific conditions. We can look at particular symptoms and how to alleviate them. But thank you so much for joining. Oh, does it all calm down post-meno? It should do. Yes, it should do. And certainly symptoms like brain fog, you should feel a clarity of thought again. That is the idea. It should calm down. It is so difficult compared to men, isn't it? We really do have it harder. And then you've got all this medical misogyny as well, and all the years of sort of underfunding around women's health. And on top of that, you've got all the new and emerging things coming from, for example, all the biohackers, which I find really, really interesting what they're doing. But again, in equal measure, I'm just deeply frustrated that so many of the studies are around men, based on men rather than women. But you can kind of understand it when men are on a 24-hour hormone cycle. Ours can be 28 days, or it could be way longer, and it can be they're just testing on women creates so many more variables than testing on men. So it is we are complex and unique, but we obviously have a lot comes with it. But like I said at the beginning, women do tend to live longer, but we suffer more with chronic disease, all these autoimmune, osteoporosis, all sorts of conditions. But there is a tremendous amount that we can do to help prevent, to help manage. Is getting ahead. So, for example, for some people, who know that their bone density might be an issue. For example, maybe they've got a history of anorexia. When going into something like perimenopause, they might preemptively decide to go on HRT of some sort just to prevent that. So we do have a lot more knowledge now. There is so much that we can be doing naturally, but what we want to be doing is keeping our hormones safe. And even post menopause, we want to be keeping our hormones safe. And if there's one thing to take away from today, it's eat those cruciferous veg. Embrace the broccoli, the cauliflower, the kale, the pak choi, the spinach, all of them. Yes, can I mention the test? So there are two different tests that I've mentioned today. So there's one called essential estrogens from Genova Diagnostics, but it's the American spelling. So it's Americans, they just do EST for estrogen, they don't put the O at the front. So essential estrogens, GDX is what you could search for. I think it's £285. Or more generically, you could look for estrogen metabolism assessment. And usually that's a urine test. It might also involve a buccal swab. And you get pie charts and all sorts of graphs, and you understand exactly where you're at with your estrogen metabolism out of all those different ones that I mentioned and more. And it will explain the different ratios and give advice on how to correct. And then the other test that I mentioned was the beta glucuronidase. That is something that's normally included as part of a stool test privately. I don't know whether the NHS can test for it. I'm not sure. I don't know about that. What did I say? We are not just small men. Exactly, Minxie. Exactly. We need our own clinical trials and studies, don't we? I love that. Excellent. What did I say to support the liver? The biggest thing, cruciferous vegetables. One thing today, cruciferous vegetables. Get that on the plate for your dinner. So that is excellent. Oh, thank you. It's so lovely to see you. Yes, Ginny, I will post the discount code. I'll post it here. Can't rewind. Okay, no problem. No problem. I think you'll be able to watch from the beginning once I've hit stop. Then it will upload. Excellent. It does all calm down. Yes. Excellent. Well, have a lovely, lovely weekend. Thank you so much for tuning in. Apologies again for the technical trouble, and I hope to have this all corrected for next week. Okay, everyone. Take care. Great to see you. Bye.